Welcome back to Awkward Sports. I'm Josh. That is my good friend Harrison. And today we are going to dive in to two football teams that are currently on opposite sides of the spectrum. Harrison, you have the Florida Gators and, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. One looking as bad as they've ever looked, ever, and the other looking not just good, but maybe great, dare I say.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that's funny enough is historically, it's usually the opposite scenario. The Florida Gators are the team that you can count on to at least make your weekend a little brighter in football before the Bucs come and make you want to rip your hair out on Sunday afternoon. Well, the script is completely flipped. Everyone's calling for Billy Napier's head after a two after going 1-2 to start the season all at home. And then who would have thought before last year the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to start off 2-0, beat a strong Detroit Lions team, and it would be where Baker Mayfield is being this elusive starting quarterback. I don't think most people would have said, yeah, I totally see that, but you know what? Here we are. You have a Gators team who, well, the score is a little closer than the game entails if you want when we dive into that later, but I'm impressed too with the Bucs and the way their defense handled the injuries but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's dive in.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned it yourself. It used to be that the script was flipped, right? It used to be that the Gators were the team that was the high expectation, the high standard, and the Bucs being the team that you may be lucky to get to a 500 record with. But let's go off of some of those expectations, right? We're the University of Florida. In the 1990s, they ran the SEC. In the 2000s, they won multiple national championships. Um, they set the standard very, very high. And recently, it hasn't been the same. You know, you go post Urban Meyer, you go to Will Muschamp. To me, Harrison, Will Muschamp put out a championship level defense year in and year out, but they couldn't ever get the offense right. They couldn't find the quarterback. Doug Nussmeier was the offensive coordinator, and Gator fans couldn't wait to get him out of town any sooner than he was. Then you go to Jim McElwain. They have Will Greer for half a season. They look promising with some of those Muschamp guys still on that team. Everything hits the fan. And then after that, Mullen comes in, revitalizes what has been a stagnant offense for Florida for years since the Meyer era, since pretty much Mullen left. He came back and he was the one that brought it back, the offensive swagger. And they had a championship level offense. And now, Harrison, with Billy Napier, it seems like they have absolutely nothing. You talk about the A&M game being closer than it actually was. It was 20-0 at halftime, and I think the final score was like 33-20. I mean, garbage time points are not going to heal these wounds. At the end of the day, this team isn't just bad. This team isn't even just historically bad. This team is not competitive, Harrison. And at the end of the day, this can't go on. It's one thing to lose games close. It's another thing to struggle. And again, it's year three. You're expecting some marginal improvements. I don't think I've ever seen a Gator football team that's been worse. What say you?
It's been a while since in recent memory. Because the thing is, you look back at, let's say, the final year of McElway when he got fired. You had a lot of competitive games at the start of the year, even if they were low scoring. Those losses to LSU, A&M, it came down to like those really small decisions. They still managed to beat Kentucky, even if it was just because the kicker just couldn't kick it far enough. Like things still went their way. You look at the last year of Mullen, they lost some shootouts. Yes, they had their embarrassing losses like South Carolina, but this team just looks defeated. You come in like the post-game press conference, there's no energy. They're almost just anticipating the end. You already hear the rumors of the board of trustees might be meeting, or the boosters have already collected Napier's buyout. When you hear all these things, what's even the motivation to even keep going? Because look, even if they beat Mississippi State, you know, one of the, in theory, guaranteed wins on the schedule, if there even is one. I'd like to think after the way Miss State started the season, it might still be one of them, at least en route to 2-10. But the energy's gone. The balloon's deflated, and you have to imagine. I didn't think I still hold the opinion he might not make it to October, but just because you have the bye week and Mississippi State, he might just make it to the UCF game and then lose, get a third home loss, and then get canned. We'll get to this topic in a moment too, but Napier is running arguably one of the worst campaigns for Florida since at least the Second World War.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about it. They haven't had an FBS win in like nearly a year. It's been like 330-ish days. Um,
It was
and not
South
only
Carolina in October, right, of
and
last
not,
year.
yeah, and then not only are they not winning, like we said, they're not competitive, and we can only hope that balloon is only deflated for the Florida football program and not popped. I mean, you look at this team as a whole, like you said, they do look defeated. You know, the buyout, if they're arranging it, I mean, hey, I'm Billy Napier, and you know it ain't working. I'm not gonna lie, $26 million coming my way pretty soon. I don't know if I'd be motivated to kind of fix this thing up if you told me pretty soon I could get that at my doorstep. Um,
100%. At what point you just take the money and you just say, I'm out. I'm
I'm
taking
not.
it back and going home, just hanging out with my kids.
Because and at the end of the day, it's become a miserable role for him. You know, we've heard, certain things. And at the end of the day, I wanted to make something perfectly clear because there are nasty fans in every program and every team, college, pro level, other all sports. There are nasty fans everywhere. So, you know, to hear that, Gator fans are taking shots at Billy Napier, the person, his family, anything like that, I don't condone that in the slightest. It's just crazy to me because at the end of the day, it is just football, and Billy Napier is a good guy. He's got a good family, and at the end of the day, this job is just too big for him, and that's really what it comes down to. But that should be the extent of it. If you just address it for what it is, the facts. He's not the coach fit for this program. He hasn't had success, and we need to go in another direction. Anything beyond that, anything taking shots at him personally, anything like that, it's just I've seen it. It's ridiculous, and honestly, it's just uncalled for, and it's not a good look for our fan base, especially if we want to bring in another coach. I get it, winning is very important, but we have to keep it to a football thing. And hey, when you have that and you have that buyout there, it's like, of course, I mean, why would he be motivated at this point anyway? But at the end of the day, you got to make this change. It's to me, it's as bad as it's ever been. We talk about the FBS not having a win in almost a year. He'd be like the first coach, I think, in Florida football history to not have beaten either Georgia or FSU in his tenure. And Harrison, last but not least, to put in perspective how bad things have gotten at University of Florida for their football program, this is the first year of my life that I can say I do not expect to beat Kentucky. For reference, we beat Kentucky 31 years in a row. I think the first time that Florida actually lost to them, I
28.
mean, I was already a legal adult, so it was like
Yeah.
it like you
I was
just
at that game.
you pencil it in. You pencil in a win there. You would pencil in a win against Vanderbilt. You'd pencil in a win against Tennessee. And it's gotten that bad where now I don't even expect to beat Kentucky. Even the years that they've beaten us recently, I still expected us to come away with wins in those matchups.
Yeah, exactly. Like even last year when things were not going great, you had great strong first half against Tennessee before things went flat. We were still talking, hey, this team might be like 4-1 after Kentucky, and then they can roll their way and maybe be higher ranked heading into Georgia. No, like those expectations have completely fallen to the floor. At this point, like again, who do you even see as an expect? The worst part, let me rephrase, the worst part about this, let alone just Kentucky. At what point do you just have to realize like you almost don't expect to beat anybody? Like I mentioned, you like to think Mississippi State is a guaranteed win with the way they've started their season, but it's not like Florida's played that much better. The
And
only
they're going on the road too. To your point, and like to your point, like I'm with you. I don't expect wins on this schedule the remainder of the season. There's a real chance this team could go 1-11, and if they do, that would be the worst season I've ever seen, and perhaps maybe the worst season uh, since like maybe pre-World War II for Florida. I don't know if they've ever gone over, but 1-11 sure ain't great.
I
Um,
think there was one year they went like 0-10-1 in like the 70s or something. I'd have to go check that, but It's let me tell you, it's not great.
No.
It's a very rare occasion the Florida Gators are even remotely this or even half as bad as they are right now.
Yeah, I think the worst season I can recall was a 4-win season. I think that was they had a 4-win season. I think with either Mac or Muschamp and a 5-win season where
McElwain,
they
McElwain was 4-7 because they had the one missed game due to the Northern Colorado and Hurricane Irma.
right. Yeah, that's not, it sounds right. So 4 wins, 5 wins. Again, those seasons we thought were rock bottom. It looks like Florida is hitting rock bottom now. Hopefully it's over. Let's pivot to something more enjoyable to talk about. We can talk about the Gators' misery for hours, but I'd rather spend time on a team that's actually doing a really good job, Harrison, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team where the expectations are in the basement most years. You lose Tom Brady. You think, all right, now you got to reset. It's like, look what happened to the Patriots after Tom Brady departed. They have been a mess. The Buccaneers lose Tom Brady, and you think, all right, back to the basement in the NFC South for this team. Contrary, they've won the division the last 3 years, and they are tied for first place in the division right now with somehow the juggernaut New Orleans Saints, because, everybody saw them coming, scoring on literally every single drive they've been on the field. But this ain't about the Saints. This is about the Bucs. I cannot believe that they went in to Detroit without Antoine Winfield Jr., the best safety in the NFL, without Luke Gedeke, their starting offensive tackle, which, by the way, the Lions exploited with Aiden Hutchinson, 4.5 sacks for him on the day. And then not having Vita Vea in the second half, we got the report back. It's an MCL sprain. He's day to day. Thank the Lord. It's not anything long term. And you take all of those key pieces that have been out, and and Kalijah Cansey, the first round draft pick from last year. He hasn't played the first 2 weeks. All those players are out, and Harrison, the Bucs still find a way to win.
It's honestly one of the more mind-boggling things I have seen because when you look at the stats, the reality is the Lions outplayed the Bucs in every single way, more than double total yards. The Bucs couldn't get a run game going at all. Twice the number of first downs, and yet that Bucs red zone defense just still managed to find a way to show up and get the job done where it matters most. Hey, it's not great when the team runs down the field. You have that issue, but also, you know what? You did your most important job, and that was keep points off the board.
Yeah, bend but don't break, right? And we talk about that defense and how stellar they were. And again, you credit that to them moving the ball down the field. And this is just more for the audience, but it's just like the Lions are just an incredibly great team. They're just like
Oh yeah.
that's why they made it to the NFC Championship last year. Ben Johnson's one of the best offensive minds in football. And when you cut to the sideline and you see how frustrated he's looking, I'm telling you, Todd Bowles, the master schemer on defense, won that battle. And it was very impressive to me. Even on the flip side, you bring in a guy like Liam Cohen. Some people had their gripes. I looked at that game as the Lions were taking virtually everything away. They took away the run game, like you mentioned. They took away Mike Evans for the most part. Chris Godwin, like I've been saying, I said this was going to be a resurgence year for him in this new system, and he is looking like prime Chris Godwin, 2018, 2019 Chris Godwin again. He's been spectacular, had a phenomenal game, and he carried us on that offense to a win. But props to Liam Cohen when everything wasn't really working, still being innovative and creative and finding ways to make things work. And it's not like Harrison, the Lions were off their game. On the offensive side of the ball, they were pulling out all the tips and tricks, and they even pulled out a fake punt, and they succeeded on the fake punt. And then they went for it again on that same drive and converted. And the Bucs still were able to get off the field. It was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, it's one of those games where one just credit, yeah, like you said, credit to the coaching. I It's actually kind of wild to look and just see with such a low scoring game. You have two wide receivers have nearly identical receiving yards. The fact that Chris Godwin has 117 of Baker Mayfield's 185 yards is absolutely bonkers. Just like you found the one target who found a way to get through the Lions defense and help get the job done. Shout out to Godwin there. And you look at the numbers, she's like All these guys just had a good game. Like Jahmyr Gibbs still rushed 84 yards. That's a successful day. Jameson Williams still almost 80 yards. Great day. Montgomery total yards about 70 between the running game and the passing game. It just takes those individual moments. You need like one or two things to go your way, and that's how you get it done.
Yeah. Absolutely. Chris Godwin, 2 touchdowns on the game in the Detroit game. For the record, that's as many touchdowns as he had all of last season. He got that in one game. Now I wanted to pivot to a guy that you've just mentioned, Baker Mayfield, because I have been critical of Baker Mayfield in the past. And when I say I have actually never been more impressed with Baker Mayfield than I was in this game, he was lights out spectacular. What was the thing I was saying before the season about Baker Mayfield and this team? Can he take that step to beat one of those teams? Can he do that? Well, we just saw him do it in the regular season at least. We've seen him win a couple of playoff games. He's starting to make me believe, quite possibly, don't make me regret this Baker Mayfield. He's starting to make me believe that he could actually be the guy here for the long, long term with plays like he made in that Detroit game, not being afraid to use his legs when the pocket broke down. There were plays where he scrambled. I'm like, is this Baker Lamar Mayfield out here? I'm like, Tom Brady's not doing this. Tom Brady is not going to be able to get out of a lot of those situations. So there was many times that the offensive line broke down. Again, they're going to come together. They need Gedeke back. Barton's going to grow in his role. They're all going to mesh as the season goes on. I'm confident in that. But right now, the offensive line was breaking down. He was able to extend plays and go off script. And that was the difference in the game. And when we needed touchdowns, when we were trailing, he came back and he put us over the top again. When we needed it, he delivered on the road in a hostile environment. And I can't say much more, but it's just an incredible performance from Baker Mayfield.
Absolutely. And it's almost like if you look at the actual numbers, they don't do him a service. It's one of those times where it's like the eye test really truly is what showed the worth of the guy. Just the way he was quick on his feet and what's the word I'm looking for? He's able to be more spontaneous. One of his touchdowns came on pocket collapsed, found the way again, 11-yard gain. Very next play, 11 yards, gets a touchdown. That's what you do to get it done. You got to just play their strengths, just forget the weaknesses. Shout out to Baker Mayfield. Not his prettiest performance, but man, was it one of his grittiest.
I mean, I was completely pleased all across the board for sure. One other thing I really liked that I saw from this Bucs team this week was their coaching staff making adjustments when they realized things weren't working. So you go to the first quarter, right? Luke Gedeke is out. They put in this backup tackle, Justin School. And Justin School got schooled. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He got schooled. And Aiden Hutchinson, one-on-one, you notice that, and I'm like, by the third time it happened, Harrison, I'm like, I remember Hutchinson had 2 sacks, and it was a third down. And I'm seeing School lined up one-on-one with Hutchinson again. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And Hutchinson got that third sack, and I'm like, all right, well, it's still the first quarter. We still got time in the first quarter. There's like 7 minutes left on the clock in the first quarter. So it's like there's still a lot of football left. What are you going to do to help this guy out? And again, this isn't really me ragging on Justin School. This is Aiden Hutchinson we're talking about here. This guy could be Defensive Player of the Year this season. There's a reason why he was a #2 overall draft pick out of Michigan a couple years ago for a reason. He is a spectacular edge rusher and somebody that is going to be a mainstay for that team, you would think, for the long haul. You can't put him on an island with a backup tackle. And I like the fact that as the game wore on, obviously, you couldn't completely take him out of the game, but they did other things to prevent that one-on-one happening throughout the course of the game. Because if that happened throughout all 4 quarters, Bucs aren't leading down. They're not going down the field and scoring those other touchdowns to win that game.
No, absolutely not. So now I got a question for you. Looking at how they performed against Detroit, they come in, they go up against next week, the Denver. I just threw it to the wrong team, Broncos. I'm trying to take a knock at Bo Nix here. If they're able to, how do you think that's going to translate? You're back at home. You find a way to pull out a win against the Lions. What kind of boost do you think it has when it comes to just suddenly having an easy opponent like Denver.
Right. And remember, Harrison, on our other podcast, we talked about big wins for the Bucs, possibly what was a potential trap game for the Bucs. And remember, I said this game against Denver at home was the trap game. We talk about that. But when I said that, I also anticipated us losing to Detroit. Now we beat Detroit. So I think this is even more of a trap game than I initially thought.
I would agree with that.
You're coming back home. You're playing Denver. Sean Payton's coached against the Bucs a number of times in his career, dating back to his time as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. It is a rookie quarterback. If this team is for real, then they're going to beat the bad teams. They are. They're not going to. The teams that are for real not only beat the good teams, but they beat the bad ones too. Well, Bo Nix is a rookie quarterback. I would imagine Todd Bowles is going to do something like he did against Jane Daniels. I mean, Jane Daniels didn't see a whole lot. He hadn't seen a whole lot. But again, Bo Nix has more experience, even though he is also a rookie. But still, NFL experience is different than college football. He hasn't seen a whole lot of NFL action. This should be an easy game, but a game that Tampa should not be letting their guard down by any means. They're going to have to come out and be ready to play. Because again, it's the NFL. They asked Jim Harbaugh when he returned to the Chargers, what was one of the big differences between coaching in college and coaching in the NFL, since he's had a lot of success at both levels. And his answer was, every win is hard in the NFL, every last one. So I think that holds true here. Yeah, the Broncos may not be a good team, but it's also early and we don't really know who's who and what's what yet. Every win's hard. I don't care if you're at home. I don't care if you're going against a rookie quarterback. You can't be riding that high from the big win against Detroit. You have to focus back up and try to beat the Denver Broncos. Again, easier said than done, because this is uncharted territory for a Bucs team that hasn't started off 3-0 since 2005.
No, absolutely. And look, we're talking about college versus the NFL. There's no such thing as a tune-up game in the NFL. It's why 9-7 teams, or sorry, I guess 9-8 teams now with the extra game.
It's going to be 9-9 with the extra weeks down the road, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that's what they're working towards. But look, teams can lose 7 or 8 games and still make the playoffs and go on a run versus in college. Look, schedules are so different, so lopsided that you have to essentially go undefeated to even sniff the chance at, and obviously, with the extended playoff, it's a bit of a different story, but you get what I mean by that. You can never let your guard down, especially when you have a head coach that owned you for over a decade in New Orleans and still knows how to win in Tampa. Look, think about the ways that in the last, especially in those years with Brady, the Saints would come into town and just absolutely demolish the Bucs offense. And some low scoring one time is like even just 9-8. You don't think Sean Payton can do that on a different team? Doesn't matter if it's Bo Nix out there. Again, he can do absolutely nothing, but if the Bucs get shut down, does not matter.
Well, one thing we know for sure, Harrison, is that the Bucs are going to have to keep and stay sharp for this upcoming matchup against the Denver Broncos. Again, big win for them against the Lions. You're going against Denver. You got to get that. It's a must win there. And then, of course, the Gators, man, they got, it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better on that side of it. But again, we talk Gators, where they need to go, where the Bucs need to go, and what they've done so far. But ultimately, it looks like for the foreseeable future, these two teams are going to be going down different roads, without a doubt. So, that being said, this has been another episode of Awkward Sports. I am Josh. That is my good buddy Harrison. We will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.